Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This morning, we're pleased to present Chris Brown with Nutanix. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hey, everyone. Oop, am I speaking? Ah, there we go. Awesome. Didn't want to be talking to myself. So my name's Chris Brown. I'm a technical marketing manager at Nutanix, covering our DevOps and Calm products. Who here's heard of Nutanix before? We got one? Awesome. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what Nutanix is, and then I'm going to talk about a customer example, how we helped combine with Amazon to make a customer change how the customer does business. So before we get started, I love this quote, so I love putting it in presentations, but software is eating the world. And that's so true that that's why we're all here. Companies now differentiate through software advances, through changes, through rapid innovation and rapid improvements, not through traditional pieces. It's all about how you can deliver things faster, more efficiently, and at the same level of security and compliance that you need. And you don't have to look far to see it. Netflix replaced Blockbuster, Amazon replaced Border and Barnes & Noble. That's why we're here. We all know this, we all accept it. So I'm not going to dive on it too much, but I still just love that quote. So what is Nutanix, before getting into the customer example there? So Nutanix, we were founded in 2009, and then we started selling in about 2011. We started selling an on-premise infrastructure stack that combined all of the pieces together. But what's really interesting and why we're here is because now we have native integrations into AWS to make a true hybrid architecture, giving you a single pane to manage your hybrid architecture and to view and control your entire infrastructure end to end. So Nutanix is broken out into three main products. We've got Acropolis, which is the core data handling on-prem, Prism, which is our management pane, and our operational insight pane, where we put a bunch of machine learning and infrastructure management in there, and then Calm, which stands for Cloud Automation and Lifecycle Management. That's our new product, and that's what I rep. But that's really where our native extension into AWS comes and how it all works together. The reason I have this slide here is that Calm isn't just isn't a tack-on. It is a truly integrated native piece of our infrastructure. We acquired the company, Calm.io, which came from this back in September last year. But we didn't release it until this year because we wanted to take the time to truly integrate it and make it a native part of our platform. And Calm brings full application lifecycle management, self-service and governance, and hybrid cloud management to the Nutanix platform. But that's enough marketing stuff. I think I met that quota. Time to move on to how we've helped the customer. So how do we define DevOps? Everyone's got a slightly different definition, so I just wanted to put up our definition so you can see where we're coming from. We define DevOps as the process of removing friction between developer and customer value. So the reason I put that up here is because no one can say if you buy our technology, you're going to be DevOps. Or if you hire this guy, you're going to be DevOps. It's a process. It's a continuous journey. So you can't buy Nutanix and be DevOps. That's not what this is about at all. But I'm going to show you how one of our customers has used Nutanix to help them improve their DevOps processes. So for this customer example, we have a large healthcare provider. They've got devices all over the US collecting data. And this data has to be brought together, needs to be coalesced and then be processed and stored. They want to adopt containers and a hybrid architecture because that's how they're going to get faster. They know that that's what they need to move faster and be able to deliver more service and more value to their end users. But the problem is their current infrastructure was not flexible enough. They were spending too much time dealing with their technical debt from their existing three-tier, their existing pieces, and they couldn't move forward. They couldn't adopt that hybrid architecture they wanted. So this is how they started. They started out with a legacy infrastructure running their enterprise workloads as well as this processing device. They've got all these field devices running all over the US, as I said, that come into this legacy infrastructure, goes through a processing, and then stored in a back-end database. This means that they're stuck. They can't scale easily. They don't have the agility because they can't automate it easily. There's too many pieces they need to touch. There's too many things they need to move and too many things that can easily break as they make these changes. So they're stuck. They're held down to a single data center or a single cloud. And that's not where they want it to be. They decided that it was time for a new path. And they had 4 requirements. First requirement was that the data processing needed to happen as close to the source as possible with the ability to quickly burst. They didn't want to be sending data long distances. They wanted to handle data processing as close as they could to the source of the data and then just export the post-process data. They didn't want to have to be intaking all of the raw data, just what they cared about. They needed the backend database to run on-prem for compliance reasons, and not all of their infrastructure was going to be cloud ready. But they wanted the ability to take that infrastructure and move it to the cloud when they were ready. Finally, is they needed the ability to, or they also needed the ability to quickly update and patch processing to handle high security demands. So, I mean, as everyone knows, security updates are coming out rapidly. There was just the one this week that came out for Mac OS devices. There was the vulnerability that was released on Twitter saying that you could get in without a root password on any Mac device running the newest versions of code. They had to release a version of code instantly to fix that. They released it within a day. And while that's Mac OS, not what this customer is using, that's true across. I mean, you look at what happened with Equifax. There was a struts vulnerability that happened, and they needed to get that patch out, and it didn't. And so now we're in where we are today. And finally, they already had existing on-premise infrastructure. They didn't want to waste the investment in it. It was still depreciating. They still had use for it. They didn't want to abandon it entirely, but they also needed to move to something to let them move faster and start moving more workloads into AWS. So they decided they were going to use 4 different things here. First is they were going to use AWS to handle the data processing. Get that processing as close to the source as they could, with the ability to quickly burst if a large amount of devices came on or more people logged in or what have you. They needed to run the backend DB on-prem, and they needed to run their legacy workloads until they were ready to move them to a cloud native and move them into AWS. And so that's where Nutanix came in. With the need to quickly patch and update their processing and their applications to handle the high security demands they had because it's healthcare data, they used containers. And then finally, they didn't want to waste their existing investments, so they took all of that infrastructure and moved it into an OpenStack cluster. They use, just in case, like they just need something, some garbage, some burst. The customer actually literally said to me, they expect the OpenStack to fail. But they have it there just as a way that they can burst if they need it, if they need. So why did they choose Nutanix for that? Well, Nutanix was built, with many of the same ideas as AWS, but not, obviously nowhere near as advanced as what AWS can do today, as you've seen this entire week. But the idea here is that you can start small, you can grow quickly, and you can pay for only what you need with this Nutanix infrastructure. And then you can extend it in AWS and move workloads around. So by combining our forces, by taking AWS, Nutanix, and containers all together, they were able to change their workflow from what you saw before into this. They've got their field devices running out there wherever they may be in the US. This replicates into AWS, where they've got a set of containers that run processing. It's a 5-step processing feature. So they go through and they process all of this data. They also have a second set, which they run through for development. So they're able to quickly develop it in the same infrastructure that they run in production and able to move back and forth between them. This then exports the information down to the Nutanix on the database that they need to keep on-premise for their reasons. And then finally, as I said, for burst reasons, they can go into OpenStack. So that's what they chose. AWS, Nutanix, containers, and OpenStack all combined together to give them an infrastructure that was future-ready and able to take those workloads that were stuck because they're spending too much time spinning wheels, trying to update, trying to patch, trying to keep track of everything, and move into the new world. What's the future, though? I haven't mentioned Calm at all there. This is because that customer happened before we introduced Calm. So now, with Calm, they're able to unify all of these different pieces into a single interface. They're able to manage their containers, their AWS resources, their Nutanix resources, all in one place, and able to see end-to-end the flow of their data. So if we go back to that chart I had where we talked about the scales, there's more than one scale to the agility. It's not just the company moves up as a whole. You've got 4 different dimensions, at least. You've got infrastructure, architecture, operations, and culture. And you need to move along all of them. So we broke down the stages down there. And AWS quickly helps by making those much simpler and much easier to solve. Calm can come in and fill in the other pieces. Can come in and help you move even further down this scale. So our goal with this is to give you an infrastructure that's ready for your workloads of yesterday, tomorrow, and help you move into AWS. And bring in Calm to manage it all from one place, one portal, one frame. Thank you all for coming. I actually was a little bit short today, but that's probably good. Give you back a few minutes.